Tornado of Elemental Turbulence is an absolute blast to play. As it is a fizz-based spell, there are 1,000 ways to build this. I decided to do a tri-elemental Inquisitor that focused on area for explosions, for speedy clear, and a lot of tank. The single target leaves something to be desired, but is capable of killing uber bosses and farming tier 17s if that's something that you like to do. But what I focused on mostly with this build was tier 16 strongbox farming, and it was awesome. Pop a strongbox, the entire screen explodes, open it again, and do it again. This build has a ton of layers of defense. We get 90 max res, we have Aegis Aurora for ES recovery, we have dual ES and life recovery through EB Mind Over Matter, we have Leech, Regen, a pile of armor, a good amount of fizz taken as, and 60-60 block and spell block with glancing blows. This build pretty much doesn't die in tier 16s, and then tier 17s, as usual, you're going to have to roll them with Chaos Orbs, but it can absolutely do them. And I was able to take down a few Uber bosses as well, but then I remembered how much I hated doing them, and now that I have to buy 5 fragments and spend 12 divines on Maven, it makes me a little bit less inclined to do so. Now, why should you play this build? I feel like this is a section that I should probably start including in all of my builds, because all of my builds tend to do something really well, and maybe not everything really well. This is one of the better all-arounders that I've made this league, and you should definitely play it if you want to farm tier 16s and never die. I know a lot of people are looking for a playstyle like this, where tier 16s are fun, they don't have to worry about dying, so they can get those levels really easily. I very easily got up to level 97. So play this build if you want something that is a fast, fun map clearer that is very tanky and also has the ability to do tier 17 and Uber content. Again, if you're doing primarily nothing but tier 17s, there are definitely better builds for it. And if you were just looking for an Uber bosser and nothing else, there are better builds for it. But as an all-arounder that excels in tier 16 maps, I can definitely recommend playing this. I'd say the build's only real downsides are not elite single target. We get about 10 million DPS at the top end, and also movement speed. It doesn't have a ton of movement speed, has a fairly snappy shield charge, but it definitely doesn't have quite as much move speed as I'd like. So there's a lot going on in this build, so if you plan on playing it or are just interested in learning some things about this build, definitely stick around till the end, and I've got some hot tips and tricks for you. You can also see how I crafted this chest. All right, let's get into it. Okay, well, here we have the level 97 Tornado Sphere. This was originally going to be a Hydrosphere and Tornado build, where we were triggering, using a Cane of Kulamak, our tornadoes by casting Hydrosphere. Ultimately, there was just too much socket pressure and was not worth running 2 6 links. So we switched to a 1 spell layout using a wand and shield. And honestly, this build was an absolute blast. It was phenomenal. And even though it's not perfect, there are definitely some flaws, and we'll get into the things that you can improve. It was an absolute blast to play. And it also forced me to learn some things about the graveyard, which we will get into as well. So let's start with our gear. This wand is not good. The prefixes are good, but then I filled the suffixes and I just never finished the item. It has a couple of good suffixes, but they're very low rolls. Crit chance for spells and multi are both like tier 5 or something. And that implicit is not that good. You'd rather have spell damage. So definitely a DPS upgrade here is possible. Basically what you want is +2. +2 cold is the best because it works with your hatred as well. And then spell damage, crit chance for spells, crit multi, and then double damage if you can get it. We are using the Devouring Diadem. This allows us to run Hatred, Purity of Ice, and Determination in here alongside of an Enlighten 4. This build has a ton of auras, and the Diadem is pretty much mandatory if you want to run as many as I do. Next, we have the Aegis Aurora with a spell block corruption on it. This helps us get to, I believe, 64-62 block. That amount of block is really important so that we recover ES every time we block. So if we're blocking often, we're recovering a ton of ES, and our ES pool is pretty much always topped off. The 5 max cold res that we get here also helps towards our melding setup, because we are 90 max res when we have our flasks in, of course. And our flasks are always up because we run the Tides of Time. There are a couple more things required for the Tides of Time. I have a couple of medium cluster jewels, but our flasks are very good uptime, and the ones that matter, the Ori Ascend and the Taste of Hate, are always up. We use the Replica Dragon Fangs for the +3 levels, but also for the reservation efficiency. This works both for life and ES, so allows you to get a little bit more in. For our rings, these are mostly just solving resists and stats. We have Chaos Res, Dex and Int. Int and Strength are important because we are a Inquisitor, so having your numbers be pretty close is going to get you the most efficiency of critical strike chance from the Ascendancy. The other ring here is just juiced up res, fire, lightning, chaos, and a little bit of life on it. Our boots and gloves both go for life regeneration rate. I made both of these with just a regular fracture and then essences. So this one I used an essence of avoid being shocked until I hit, I actually hit this move speed and then slammed on tier 1 fire. So I got very lucky with these, but basically you're just looking for move speed and a useful suffix at the same time. Doesn't take that long to hit that. But these boots enable us to be fully shock avoid to use Storm Shroud so that we are immune to all elemental ailments. Even more life regen on the prefix there. So 30% from the boots, and then the gloves get us another 21%, some regen, some life and chaos res. The cool thing about this build is because we're doing all 3 damage types, as long as you get one type of leech, cold, fire, or lightning, any of those will do for giving us a leech cap. In the belt slot, we use the Tides of Time. I love this belt. It's so cool. It gives you a flask effect for utility flask, which we'll get into in a second. And that applies to both unique and magic. And you can get a lot of value out of this. So you don't really have to worry about the life and mana flask charges. Just get 3 for utility and you're good to go. And we'll talk about the flask in a second. But lastly, we need to talk about this chest. How did I make this chest? I never went and put any tailoring orbs on it, and I still may. But this is actually the best armor ES chest that you can roll. This is, as far as prefixes go, you may prefer something else for suffixes, but this is perfectly rolled. 536 ES is the most that you can get without a tailoring orb. And I made this in the graveyard. I actually made 3 of these, and all of them ended up 6 T1. Not all of them were divine perfectly, but all of them ended up 6 T1. This one even has a perfect base, 100% perfectly divined. Very lucky to have crafted this, but honestly, this is such overkill. You don't really need this. We have 3,000 shield. If we weren't even wearing this chest, we'd have 1,700, and that would probably be enough for this build. So I made this because I wanted to mess around with the graveyard and try to make something really awesome. So if you do want to make this, I actually have the graveyard link that I made with the help of some folks in my chat. That will be down in the description, and it is actually quite reliable. But we did use all 88 corpses in order to make it fully efficient. We wanted to get 30 quality and really do everything. It wasn't too bad. We didn't use that many of the adjacent corpses that are really frustrating to work with, but you do have to use some so you can make a few copies. I sold one of the worstly divined versions of this for, I think, like 20 divines, but this one is perfect. So I'll probably tailoring orb this one and then maybe try to sell it for a bit more. But we get cold res as an implicit for our melding, and then determination aura effect. That was kind of annoying to hit. I got very unlucky with conflict orbs, as I always do. But yeah, 2,300 armor and 500 ES is pretty cool to get on your chest. All right, we'll jump in and talk about the flasks. So we have Oriath's End here. I have these out so they don't make noise from going off. But Oriath's End, we actually use the res from this. And because we have flask effect here and some on our tree, this ends up being a lot bigger chance to explode. I think somewhere at least 40-something%. And then the res that you get from it is significantly more than 35. It's more like 50 or something. So a ton of value from this Oriath's End. We scale a little bit of AoE in order to make these explodes fun, and they really are. For the Taste of Hate, I think we're getting like 7 max res from this, bunch of cold res, and then Fizz taken as, that's elevated as well, and then Fizz as extra cold. That works for our tornado. That also is being increased by all of our flask effect. We have a crappy armor flask here. I was going to grab a Progenesis and put it here, and I just never did because I never felt like I needed it. But that would obviously work phenomenally in this build and really probably should be here. Without this flask where you still have like 21,000 armor, which I think is probably enough to justify using the Aegis, but we need the Aegis for the max cold anyway. So if you want to upgrade this build, definitely a Progenesis in this armor slot, and then maybe trying to get more armor on the tree or something. We have a move speed flask with more movement speed as a suffix, and then the Bottled Faith. This gives us a ton of crit, ton of increased damage. We're already scaling Consecrated Ground effect, so this is a no-brainer on an Inquisitor like this. For our links, let's actually start with our Tornado. We have a level 30 Tornado with all the levels. I actually bricked this. I only has 15 quality on it right now because I tried to double corrupt my most recent one, and it went up to 21 but also down to 15 quality. You definitely want to have 20 quality. Each point of quality is I think is 2% movement speed for your tornadoes, which is mandatory. You have to get movement speed on your tornadoes in order to map. You get movement speed from levels and quality, and I highly recommend getting a lot of quality. I actually run an enhance for all mapping. I was doing it for most bossing, but for Ubers, I was putting on Conk Effect just to give me another, really another damage link. So 21-23 Tornado is going to be your best bet. Probably worth double corrupting a few of those. They'll definitely be worth some money. We use increased crit damage, and increased critical strikes. We have Awakened Added Fire that gives us +1 and fizzes extra for our tornadoes. We have an Empower. This not only gives us more damage, but it also gives us more movement speed. So levels are super important. And like I said, the Enhance that I swap with Conk Effect for Uber bossing and tier 17s if they're difficult. Our aura setup here, we have Hatred, Purity of Ice, and Determination. Link to this in Light in the helmet. Purity of Ice, it's got to be level 23 to get that one extra point, but we also get a bunch of aura effect, so we're getting a lot from this. It enables us to run a melding. We do get to 90 max res when our when our flasks are up. You can see that there. We also run Tempest Shield and Vitality on our life pool. Tempest Shield helps us get to a healthy 62 block for glancing blows. We also have this link to an Arrogance support. In our weapon, we run Frostblink and Herald of Ash and Righteous Fire. This build easily sustains Righteous Fire, 90 max res and thousands of recovery per second. You could actually run a Vol Righteous Fire here to get even more damage. You'd probably pretty quickly recover the damage that you take from it, so I actually would probably recommend that. The Herald of Ash is a good chunk of damage and really helps with the Explode prolif from the Aurea's Ascend. I run Frostblink just to get over ledges. We have a shield charge as well. That's down here in the gloves, where we also have Punishment that we self-cast. Self-casting a curse is really not that big of a deal because our tornadoes are just kind of going off, and it gives us time to cast our curses. We also have a Frost Shield here, which is really nice for this build. It gives us a bunch of base crit. It gives us more damage reduction because the shield will take damage for us. And the downside is that it degens some of your ES, but we have so much recovery that you don't even notice it. So you press it, and even out of combat, you can barely even see the degen, but in combat with your flasks up and things, it doesn't move at all. So if you're okay with not having an instant move skill, you can actually replace the Frostblink with a Molten Shell. This build doesn't actually have a Molten Shell in it, despite having a good amount of armor. I actually don't have any guard skill at all, which is a little bit frustrating, but I just ran out of links. I had too many auras and too many utility skills. There are probably ways to solve this, but I just never got around to it. In the boots, we have the Call to Arms Enduring Cry setup. This works really well in this build because as an Inquisitor, we are regenning ES for every life that we regen. So Enduring Cry causes us to get a ton of both. We probably don't even need this setup, but the endurance charges are nice for physical damage reduction, and that burst of regen is fantastic in boss fights. Then lastly, we have a Zealotry and a Divine Blessing. No inspiration linked to this. It's not needed. As you can see, it barely touches our ES pool because we have so much of it, and we are also very socket starved anyway. All right, time to talk about the Ascendancy and the tree. There's a lot going on here. Let's quickly talk about the Inquisitor. This is a standard elemental damage Inquisitor, Sanctuary and Pious Path. It gives you consecrated ground around you all the time, makes enemies take more damage, and it also makes your life regen apply to your ES. This is why we are able to run Eldritch Battery and Mind Over Matter. We don't have to take it on the tree because we have the Devouring Diadem, but we do take Mind Over Matter to make this ES pool also act as defense for us. So then Righteous Providence and Inevitable Judgment, it makes it so our crits ignore monster resistances, so we're trying to get our crit as high as possible. With our Frost Shield up, it's actually 100%, but for regular mapping, it's somewhere in the 80s. For me, that's plenty. I never felt any problems with mapping. Even on really tanky rares, it wasn't a big deal. But on single target, you're standing still in your frost shield, and you're always critting. We use a Thread of Hope over here for Glancing Blows and Divine Shield. This helps enable the recovery from our Aegis Aurora, and also gives us a little extra regen from physical damage prevented. I'll get to these 3 circles here in a second. Our clusters that I have right now, this is something you can mess around with. It was something I was messing around with at the end. Just trying to figure out, like, how do I have the best flask sustain? I don't even have this point allocated here, but using a increased effect, flask effect duration, I was thinking that maybe if I got 35% and did a 6 passive, I could just get 1, but then Alchemist Genius is just so strong. So I would say what you want to do with these is figure out exactly how much flask effect duration that you need to keep up all of your flasks, depending on the, the quality of them. If you have them corrupted for additional quality, it's going to change. So just figure out what is right for you and mess around with some medium cluster jewels. But fasting is 20% increased charges gained, and then spike concoction is another 20% gain and 10% effective flask. So spike concoction is very, very strong. On our medium cluster, we are always chilling, shocking, and igniting, so Sadist is perfect. And then Storm Rider gives us power charge generation and a decent amount of damage. We use a Storm Shroud here for reduced effect of curses. Now, Consecrated Ground provides 50% reduced effect of curses naturally, and because we always have that effect on us, getting 50% would make us curse immune. So we have 24% here and 20% on the Parandus Pact. So that's 44. Curses have 6% effect against us, which is not a big deal. Over here, we grab a triple multi-jewel. The cool thing about the multi-jewel is because it is a prismatic fire, lightning, and cold skill, we can actually get any of the above, which makes these jewels really cheap because not a lot of people are looking for multi with fire and multi with lightning. So this, I think I paid 3 divines for, which is crazy, but there's a decent amount of them out there. I did grab this strength node to get our strength and our intelligence nearby. It's a little bit of life. It's some crit. It was just worth the 1 point, but you probably won't end up needing this in your setup depending on what you have. So over here we have melding. We are pain attunement because we are low life, so this is 30% more damage. Our Watcher's Eye, barely paid anything for this. I don't remember what the actual price was, but Consecrated Ground causes enemies to take increased damage, and then reduced extra damage from crits. This is super, super important for tier 17s. If you're going to farm them, you can, I would highly recommend getting this mod as the most important mod on your Watcher's Eye, and then just get, because we're running so many auras, just get whatever other damage you can. But then we also have Arcane Surge. When you create Consecrated Ground, we don't really need this, but it gives us a little bit of extra cast speed. I don't get a lot of cast speed because cast speed doesn't actually affect your damage. Once you get your 3 tornadoes out, they're just out doing damage, and cast speed doesn't boost them at all. So just getting a little bit of extra cast speed from Arcane Surge is a nice to have. Okay, let's talk about the circle tech. So, as you'll see, a lot of my investment in this character is in the middle of the tree here. So what are we getting from this? We have a Parandus Pact with physical damage here. We have an Unnatural Instinct here, and we have a Might of the Meek here. Let's quickly go through what they all do. Unnatural Instinct causes you to effectively allocate all of the unallocated points in the radius, but all of the allocated points give you nothing. So if you hover over your strength here, it gives you nothing. So you can still get the notables, but any small passives that you have allocated give you nothing. So we path through mana because we don't care about having extra mana. And then that gives us a bunch of bonuses all around it. So really, really big stuff here. We get area of effect from these 3 points. We get life regen here, physical damage. But let's talk about the other bonuses first. We have Might of the Meek over here. This gives us 50% increased effect of non-keystone passives in the radius. Notables will grant nothing. So like Constitution over here, this is doing nothing for us, but we are getting 50% increased effect of the travel nodes around it. So strength goes from 10 to 15, life goes from 5 to 7 because it doesn't round up. So these are all 7-point life nodes. These resistance nodes gives us 27 apiece, which is why I grabbed all 3. But lastly, we have one more bonus that works with these as well. The Parandus Pact gives us 6% physical damage to every point in the radius. It doesn't work for keystones, but every point in the radius. So this is a little bit confusing, but the way this works is it's adding 6% physical damage to every point we allocate in this circle. All of these in this circle that are overlapping with this circle, so here, this counts as allocated and is giving us the benefits of the Parandus Pact for these points. So for this area here, where all 3 overlap, it is giving us 6% physical damage. It is adding 50% effect, and then it is allocating all of them. So as you'll see in here, we get cast speed, physical damage, intelligence, physical damage, area of effect, physical damage, regen, fizz, and then these are just really big fizz nodes because they were fizz naturally. Life, strength, all of these end up getting allocated. This is really, really fun tech. You can do a ton with this, especially because there's so many different Parandus packs. I already have plans to use this again, but also all the points that we are allocating on these pathways here are also giving us physical damage. So as you can see, these crit nodes, this travel node that I turned into Flask effect duration, all giving us % fizz. All in all, this one jewel is giving us about 250% increased damage. This Unnatural Instinct is giving us all of this. You can take a look at this. 48% of area of effect, some regen, strength and intelligence. It's just a ton of damage. And then of course, Might of the Meek. I was able to get Corrupted Blood on this. I think I paid around 8 divines, but who knows if these start flying off the shelves, it might be too expensive and you might have to get it somewhere else. So that is my tornado build. It was a ton of fun. I really enjoyed it. I love mapping and not dying. It feels so good. But once you get into tier 17s, things are just going to kill you anyway. Unless you spend all day rolling the maps to make them easy, you're just going to die. And that's why I don't really run them. I don't enjoy them. This build's okay at Uber Bosses. The damage is not quite good enough, but the tank is there to allow you to get through a lot of the difficult phases. If you could add a Molten Shell, it would be even tankier. I actually think for Ubers, I might even drop Shield Charge and put Molten Shell in and just keep the Frostblink. When you Frostblink near a boss, you're going to get a bunch of cooldown recovery, so it'll be back up really quickly. I probably would recommend going Molten Shell for bossing, but I did Ubers, a couple of them. I think it was Uber Shaper and I don't remember who else, but I did a couple of Ubers with this build and didn't have a Molten Shell. So if you have any questions, you can comment down below or stop on my Twitch, twitch.tv/AER0___. I'm live almost every single day, and I would love to see you over there. If you like this kind of content, like the video, comment down below, and subscribe to the channel. Hit that little notification bell if you are not seeing my videos come up in your feed and you would like to. Now, I'm going to go get ready for the stream. Appreciate you all hanging out. I hope you guys are having fun with this league. I know I sure am. Despite the problems, I'm still enjoying 3.24, and I got a lot more builds to play. So thank you all for watching. And as always, take care.